Hello and welcome. This is game 3. If you would like to see game 2 or game 1, click in the link in the description in the corner. So, it's time for game 3, and for some reason, Magi doesn't do the usual strategy of being AFK. It's surprising, really surprising. But this time Magi actually picked out the really appropriate camo. I mean, this looks beautiful, right? Everybody loves the look of this camo. It makes every single ship incredibly good looking. And look how well it blends in with the water and the surrounding islands. You can't even see the ship. It's as though that's a moving island. It's really amazing, right? The green looks exactly like all the trees, and the yellow looks just like the sand. It's a really good choice here, and I think the enemies are going to be really confused by the camo. Anyway, it's a map on tiers of the cruisers. It's a match on tiers of the cruisers, not a map. I suppose there is a map somewhere here too, and Magi this time is alone as well. It's a full tier 7 match. Thank you for the matchmaking boosts, and there are 0 destroyers involved. Thank you, carriers, for scaring all of the destroyers from queuing up. So the smallest ship on the enemy team is a Smolensk. Luckily there's only one, which means that it's probably not going to be quite as big of a problem as they usually are. Magi decides to go towards the sea cap, because when you spawn on the side of the map, on this map, that's usually where people go. Because in this map, honestly, it doesn't really matter where you go, because it's almost always all the same everywhere. In big ships anyway. If you're something small, then it can matter. But as in Ohio, it's fine. The funny thing is that because there are no destroyers, capping is actually going to be a very interesting situation. In that it could very well end up being that cruisers could essentially stealth cap early on. Smolensk has decent concealment range, as does the Minotaur on the enemy team, and certain other ships like Des Moines could have fairly decent concealment too. I would actually argue, or I would say that the mid map, or the mid cap on this map, which is B, is probably one of the easier caps to take in a match like this, because you can always go and hide behind the island in the middle of B. Whereas other maps don't really have that. I guess there is an island at sea, which technically an Henri or a Zao could go hide behind, but I think that it's not the easiest thing to do. There's first contact. Smolensk is actually over here, but considering she's in open water, I think she made a huge mistake. She really should have used the islands. First shot is out on the Smolensk, although I think it's unlikely that it'll do anything. The cruiser is way too far away and is already disengaging, so the chance of that doing anything is small. I would actually try to take a shot on the Salem if possible next, because the Salem is most likely stationary next to that island, which should make it far easier to actually land shells. Although I suppose shells landing on a Smolensk are a pretty big deal too. By the way, my suggestion to make Smolensk less annoying is to take away her heal, because then every single point of damage matters on that ship, even if it's HE, and even if it's fairly low caliber. Next up is probably this Zao taking a shot, because all the guns are pointed in her direction, and she can actually fire the rear turrets if she desires. And that is what Magi wants to do. Although that Zao already took a lot of damage, so who knows if the ship is gone before the shells. Yeah, that's what happened. Ship was gone before the shells arrived. The green team has taken the C cap, which is very nice. The red team is taking the B cap right now. There is nothing to... I guess technically the Salem is contesting, because the red team isn't getting many points on the B cap. And nobody obviously is going for the A cap, because there are no islands that will help you. And for some reason, people don't seem to like the A cap in random battles as much on this map. Even though if you play like ranked on this map, A cap is fairly popular, which is kinda surprising. I suppose the reason is due to how radar works and the fact that I think the spawns somehow are biased slightly towards the A cap. because far fewer ships seem to come down to the sea cap. Whereas in randoms, it's kind of the opposite. Anyway, next shot is on the Smolensk again. Although, considering how far away she is, I would be very surprised if that shot does much at all. And it seems that... oh! This could be a good opportunity though, because Smolensk is actually standing still now. And she actually gave away her last known position. I don't think that was a good shot. I would have looked at the minimap for a moment to see that the shells were slightly higher than expected. And they probably overshot slightly because of that. So basically, when you take these kinds of blind shots at range, or any kind of range shots, if you have some time, take a look at the minimap and see where the circle indicator is when you're aiming at a ship. That can often help you correct some of your aim issues. Because sometimes I've noticed that some of the shots I take, that even though it looked as though I aimed the way I expected to, that's not what the indicator in-game says, so my aim wasn't good enough. So, the red team has 2 caps, whereas the green team has 1 cap. Wow, a citadel. I suppose it shouldn't be that surprising because this is already game 3, so, you know, you would expect that these kinds of shots would work out sometimes at least, and I would say that game 3 is... at some point you have to get lucky, right? At least, if you try enough times, eventually you will get lucky. And I suppose this is the lucky moment. Minotaur is in the smoke. Magi is thinking about aiming. I would have absolutely fired, although I would have aimed slightly higher. Basically, looking at the minimap, I would aim around the plane level where the Minotaur is, into that smoke. But Magi decides not to. Slightly higher. Only slightly though. But this should be good enough, hopefully. Oh, too bad. Well, anyway, I would just try again if nothing else comes anywhere close, because, well, every ship other than the Montana and the Yamato are really far away, and I guess there's Minotaur and Salem. But the Minotaur and Salem aren't exactly accessible targets at the moment. I would actually try another shot on the Minotaur, or would have tried another shot on the Minotaur. I mean, right now is a good idea. Slightly higher? Yeah, something like that. Maybe a tad higher, but this should be good enough. And there she goes. 2 citadel heads. Okay, I didn't expect this great of a shot though, but that was really good. Bet the Minotaur didn't expect that one. And I think the Minotaur is out of torpedo range, so Magi doesn't even have to be afraid of that. So next up is to chase off all the enemy battleships. Now actually the B cap is free, as in Smolensk or Salem could probably sail into it and take it without being damaged in return. Question is whether the cruiser could then disengage from that cap or run away. That might not actually be possible, but at least they would have the cap zone. But so far, I mean, it's 2 ships lost versus 4, so the green team is ahead anyway. So it's not that bad that they don't have all the caps. A broadsiding Republique is very nice. One thing that I think that the green team is doing correctly is that they're not rushing into the red team. Often when you have a situation where the enemy team just stays really far away, what ends up happening is that your team just pushes into the enemy really hard, and then because the enemy is on the defense, well, they end up winning because they just exhaust all of your ships and then just take the caps and win by points. Or by ships. Because they fought a defensive battle which is easier than an offensive one. So I really like the fact that the green team is not pushing in hard. Like, the Corfest is sailing away, the Republique is pointing in the other direction, the Ohio is pointing in the other direction, the Montana is pointing in the other direction. The only ones going in are the cruisers who are, you know, taking the cap and getting an advantage and then probably backing off as well. Worcester is probably trying to deny the cap, but honestly that's a huge mistake considering where the Ohio is positioned. Ohio is positioned. It's kind of surprising. Think about where Magi has been with her Ohio the entire time, and yet she hasn't been punished by it. And the reason you can stay like this, broadside on, is because if you know where the enemy battleships are and who they're aiming at, you can angle slightly against most of them, and in that case you can stay mostly safe, like Magi has been, because she's far away enough and angled enough that Yamato over there, or the Republique, don't want to take shots at her, because she isn't a good target. There are better targets, and even if they do take shots at her, it's not gonna have much effect. Now that more ships are targeting Magi, well, she disengages. Which is exactly what you should be doing. I think one thing, if I would say to Magi, is I think she should use damage control party more often, at least in randoms. In cases where she isn't at much threat of being set on fire multiple times or flooded. Because in some of these games she has been rather conservative with them, and I don't think using heals always makes sense, because you run out of heals eventually. Anyway, this Hindenburg is in trouble because Ohio has 457 guns, meaning that the 30mm on Hindenburg is not enough to bounce many of the shells, or the shells. And this is why the Hindenburg keeps taking damage. Sure, they're not citadels, but the damage is still damage. She probably can't heal this up anytime soon. 5k HP left. And once the Hindenburg's taken care of, the green team will be ticking further and further ahead in points. And considering they already are ahead in points, that's a very good thing. I suppose now the green team is ahead enough that you might just push in and just get as much XP and damage as you can, because it's 4 ships lost against 7 ships lost. That's a big enough difference that I think it's worth it. Okay. Yamato took out the Salem. The green Salem, that is. But still, the green team holds the B cap, and so it should be fine. Magi can also just show broadside to the B side, because all the battleships are either basically in front of her, to some degree. I mean, the Montana, the Republique, the Yamato, they're all... None of them are, like, on direct broadsides to her. And for some reason, this Montana is showing broadside, which is a dumb idea. Even though it worked out okay this time, only took 8k damage. I would say that she should the Montana should be more positioned like Magi is. Slightly turned towards the enemy battleship, and this means that armor is much more effective. Because that's how trigonometry works. Wow. 6k damage this time, 4 overpens. That's so lucky by the Montana. Now Magi is in a bit of trouble, because her angle isn't great and it's diminishing all the time, and she can't exactly go forward to improve the situation, so she has to start reversing and probably turning away. At least that's what I would be doing. She's reversing, but that's a really nice shot on the Montana. Citadel hit. Surprisingly, Magi is not turning away, actually. I guess she thinks that the armor angle is good enough, or that the Montana just doesn't have good enough aim to take advantage of this. And I mean, she would be right, actually, I guess. The Montana absolutely was not able to take advantage of this. And there goes the Montana. Next up, Republique, who for some reason is showing full flat broadside. Full flat broadside, sorry. And I think she's gonna be in trouble due to the broadsiding nature of her. I think her starting to maneuver now is a bit late. And goodbye, Republique. Okay, well, now it's only one Yamato left, Shinue. Just one. I mean, it's one Yamato versus 6 ships, so it should be about even, right? Magi only has 7k HP, so if she takes a bad shot from the Yamato, she is toast. But on the other hand, considering Yamato is broadside, a similar situation awaits the Yamato. And there goes Magi's ship, but in return, Yamato goes boom as well. And that's actually a very nice shot on the Yamato. And this ends up with Magi having 296k damage, 5 ships sunk, 7 citadels, 2 devastating strikes, secondaries, Kraken, high caliber, and Confederate. This puts her at a nice 3,323 base XP. If only she had got 10 more base XP. Oh well, it's still an amazing result. There is one other player who did incredibly well, which is the enemy team's Yamato. 1954 base XP on a lost match. That's the 3rd result in this entire match. That is incredible as well. Very well played by the enemy Yamato. And here you can see the damage. This time, secondaries actually did very little damage. Only 11k damage, only 4k fire damage, but 281k with AP shells. This time actually, this is the least amount of AP shell hits Magi got out of all 3 of these games. I mean, it's only 73, I think the second one was 77 and the first one was over 80, but it actually did more damage than any of the other ones before. I would like to thank Magi for sending these replays to me. I mean, 3 games in the same ship where all 3 games are 300k damage? That's incredible. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the patrons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, Activo 2, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.